The Disappeared, Part 5, Sylvia. Eduardo, while I am trying to make Norberto care enough for me to do what I ask, Mother goes each day to the Plaza de Mayo. The mothers are there to protest the disappearance of their loved ones. Every afternoon they gather at the plaza to march around and around the pyramid at its center. The pyramid that was built to commemorate Argentina's freedom from Spain and stands there beside the mothers, a reminder of why they march. On the east side of the plaza, looming over the marchers, is Casa Rosada. In the pink house is the office of General Videla, the president of Argentina. Does he have any regrets when he looks down from his windows? At end of the plaza is the old jail with its barred windows. On the balcony of the jail, armed soldiers look out at the women like hawks, watching a flock of small birds, picking and choosing who next to pounce upon. Mother has joined the marchers, and Saturday afternoon I go with her. Father doesn't know about her marching. Mother says it would only be one more worry for him. She comes home from the marches and shuts herself in her room. She is putting the stories of the women into poems. The stories must be saved, she says. If the children can't be saved, then we will be a witness to their disappearance. If I can find a way to publish those poems secretly, I will. A few months ago, there were only a few women marching. Now, there are over 100. They wear white kerchiefs tied over their hair and walk arm in arm, many carrying pictures of their vanished children. Mother boldly marches with your picture, Eduardo, the newspaper picture of you protesting on the steps of the university. The determined look on your face makes it seem that you are marching too. In the official newspaper, the women are called Las Locas de la Plaza de Mayo, the crazies of the Plaza de Mayo. But I stand there amazed. You know what a quiet person Mother is, keeping to herself, her mind always busy on the next poem. In a room full of people, she is always close to the door as if ready to flee. Marching was the last thing I expected of her. But she has never missed an afternoon. In the evenings, she brings home to me the stories of the women she marches with. They are like our own story, a son or daughter swept up by police or the military and put in jails, or worse, secretly executed. The sun is hot on this afternoon, and Mother pauses for a moment to join me, where I am standing in the shade. Her friend, Senora Suarez, comes with her, and Mother introduces me. It was Senora Suarez's daughter, Alma, who once published Mother's poems. Alma's magazine was not afraid to print articles criticizing the generals. Senora Suarez is so thin I could close my fingers around her wrists. Her fleshless elbows are sharp points, and her dress hangs on her. She tells me the story of her daughter. Alma was pregnant when she was picked up, Senora Suarez says. She had her baby in jail, and we learned from someone who had been there with Alma that her baby was taken. We don't know where it is. My grandchild has disappeared. Mother says not only Alma, Senora Suarez and I hear the same stories from other mothers. Babies and even young children are taken from parents who are arrested. The military tries to justify these kidnappings, they say. Those parents have defied the government, and their children will grow up to be like their parents, a danger to the state. We find better homes for them. We give them to families who love this country. So the babies and the little children are snatched from their imprisoned mothers and given to patriotic families, often to military families who want children and can't have them. The mothers never see them again. Senora Suarez says, not only has Alma been stolen from me, but my grandchild will grow up in a family that will teach the child to hate her mother and father and me and all we stand for. Suddenly, a policeman who has been watching the marchers swoops down on a woman and drags her away. The other marchers do not stop. They merely close their ranks. What will happen to that woman, I ask. Senora Suarez tells us they will take her to the police station. This is one more attempt to harass us. They send photographers to take our pictures and spies to march with us. How can you tell who the spies are, I ask. Ah, Sylvia, Mother says, you have only to look into the eyes of a mother to find the sorrow. There is no such sorrow in the eyes of the spies, only cold deceit. Mother and Senora Suarez are back, marching, when a man comes up to the women and screams, "Traitors!" He picks up a small stone from the ground and hurls it at them. The stone glances off the shoulder of one of the mothers and falls to the ground. The marchers take no notice. Late in the afternoon, a young boy comes with his guitar and sings melancholy songs in the voice of an angel. On the way home, Mother says something that breaks my heart. "Sylvia, you must have noticed some of the daughters of the mothers march arm in arm with the mothers. I thought for Eduardo's sake you might like to march with me. I know how you grieve for him." Eduardo, what could I reply? Of course I longed to take Mother's arm and march with her, but I could not. Suppose Norberto saw me. At once he would be suspicious. My whole plan would fall to pieces, and I am sure it is the only way to bring you back to us. "Mother," I said, the words as bitter to me as any I have spoken, "I had better not. Just now the police are keeping an eye on all the students." "Yes," Mother said. "Yes, I understand. It is certainly best to be cautious." Cautious. To me that was a hateful word. Cautious, when I am risking everything in what I plan. But I could not tell Mother. I can only endure her disappointment in her timid daughter. I don't sleep. I cannot stop thinking of you, Eduardo, and of Senora Suarez and her daughter and grandchild. Do you remember Mother reading to us the deeds of Elal, the fable of Argentina's beginning? Do you remember the giant Goshi who would come every night to devour a child? Then the hero, Elal, changed himself into a horsefly, made his way into the stomach of the giant, and bit him so hard that the giant was vanquished. Eduardo, we need an Elal now to destroy the evil giants who are devouring our disappeared. At the last dawn comes, and I get up and dress. This is the day that I will drive with Norberto to his family's place in Tigre. I make some excuse to Mother and Father about spending the day with Isabella. To Norberto, who wanted to pick me up at home, I said, "My parents would never let me spend the day at Tigre with a boy," which is true. I meet him at a small cafe near the Plaza del Congreso. I can't tell one make of car from another, but Norberto's car is shiny, black, and large, like a great beetle scurrying along the road. I have worn my best summer dress, the blue one with the halter neckline and the full skirt. You said the dress made me look like a movie star. As I slip into the seat beside Norberto, I see his admiring look. We head north along the coast. I've never been to Tigre, but I know it for a sleepy port where the jungle streams from inland Argentina flow into the delta and out to the sea. Norberto is full of chatter about movies he has seen. "I want to see Rocky again, and I'll take you with me to see it. It's about the scheme to make a winner out of a loser who never got anywhere in a boxing match. The match is just for publicity, but he wins anyhow. There's some terrific boxing. I mean, he really takes a beating. You have to see Taxi Driver, too. It's about a Vietnam veteran who drives a taxi in a part of New York like our La Boca, and he goes crazy and becomes a killer. There's this great scene when blood spatters everywhere. I am frightened. I can't look at Norberto without thinking of everything for which his father is responsible, but I try to convince myself that Norberto is just a small boy who likes to pretend he is tough. He is a child pretending to be a gangster and going bang bang with an imaginary gun. Besides, I am relieved to have Norberto do all the talking, for I worry about my every word, afraid I will give myself away. From time to time, Norberto reaches over and pats my leg for emphasis. I steel myself to keep from flinching. In spite of my disgust, I feel a little sorry for Norberto and the way he is so anxious to make himself liked. I think when he was young, he must have been that boy no one picked for their team. He would have stood on the sidelines, waiting and hoping while others were chosen. All that would have changed when his father became an important and feared man, and the family became so rich that Norberto could buy himself friends. In Tigre, we park the car and are met at the Estación Fluvial by a uniformed boatman and a launch with the general's name stenciled on the bow. The launch travels through a maze of canals that make up the delta of the Parana River. The river is the color of earth, and I can see into it. We pass dense tangles of trees and huts on stilts, then surprisingly large homes tucked onto islands in the river. We round a curve, and I see the ghostly vision of a large mansion. The launch ties up at the mansion's dock, and Norberto helps me off. It's Papa's little getaway, he says, smiling at my open-mouthed amazement. As we walk up the path to the mansion, Norberto says, Papa and Mama always come down on the weekends. I have heard General Lopez is strong and dynamic man, a soldier who has crushed revolutions and destroyed his enemies. So I am not prepared for the man who comes toward us. He is leaning on a cane and very thin, like someone from whom too much has been taken. In spite of the warm weather and the sun, he is pale. The transparent pale of grubs who live underground. I see that the man is ill. Immediately I worry. If something should happen to the general, my plan will come to nothing. I am relieved to see the proud and loving look he gives Norberto. The more he cares for his son, the more it will suit my purpose. Ah, so you are my son, Norberto's new friend, he says to me. You are very welcome. Come in, come in. Norberto will show you around. I would claim the pleasure for myself, but I just now am a little tired. I had worried that the general might know who I was, but our last name, Diaz, is a common one, and there is nothing but courtesy in his manner toward me. A moment later, a woman who must be Norberto's mother embraces her son, and then hurries to her husband. She is a tall woman, her black hair pulled mercilessly back from her face. Her dark eyes are hooded like shades pulled down to keep one from seeing into a room. Arturo, she says to the general, what are you doing up? This is your time to rest. She turns to me. You're Sylvia. Our son has spoken of you. Senora Lopez takes my hand. We are so pleased Norberto has a young woman friend. I hope you will have a civilizing effect upon my son. He is too much with boys his age who think of nothing but fighting and getting into trouble. You will excuse me if I see to my husband. The general refuses to take proper care of himself. In a tone full of irony, she adds, if my husband should become ill, there would be no one to fill the prisons of Argentina. I have trouble concealing my shock. The general flushes. He starts to make an angry answer, but Senora Lopez interrupts him. Norberto, take Sylvia out to the terrace where it is cool. The terrace looks out across a wide lawn to the river. It is paved in green tiles the color of the grass and furnished with comfortable chairs and a long table. I imagine many evenings of family suppers here, or perhaps the general's fellow officers come to plot someone's destruction. Then I look again. Among the tall grasses around the terrace is a hodgepodge of cages, some large, some small, all suspended on poles. Trapped in the cages are a variety of birds. Seeing my interest, Norberto says, They're mine. I catch them. Come and see. The largest of the cages, though certainly not large enough for the poor bird imprisoned within, holds a great white creature with a long yellow bill and black feet. Its neck is folded into an S shape. As we get closer, it flaps its wings as if about to take flight. But the cage is only large enough for it to dance a bit from side to side. A great egret, Norberto says. Not very rare, but look at this one. In a nearby cage is a small bird with a red breast. Lesser red-breasted meadowlark. It's an accidental. You almost never see them here. It's difficult to tell it from a long-tailed meadowlark. I was lucky to get it. After I had a glimpse of it, I had the boys out with nets for a week. With great pride, Norberto says. I've reported it to the Ornithological Society. In their newsletter, they will mention my name. Some of the cages imprison owls and nighthawks. Last year, our English class read Julius Caesar, and I can't help shuddering as I think of Shakespeare's lines. Yesterday the bird of night did sit, even at noonday, upon the marketplace, hooting and shrieking. Norberto takes my arm and pulls me from cage to cage, identifying the captives. He tells me just where in the country each bird comes from and where they migrate to in the winter. He knows the life history of each of his prisoners. I like studying them, he says. I wouldn't mind being an ornithologist, but my father wants me to go into the army. I feel a little sorry for Norberto and his frustrated wishes. Still, I am miserable seeing the birds jailed in their meager cells. I ask, why have you put all these birds into cages? The better to study them. Why shouldn't I do what I want with them? They were on our property. Anyhow, they're better off here than they would be in the wild. They get fed without having to do a thing, and as long as they're in their cages, nothing can harm them. I'm doing them a favor. I think over what he says, but it's so wrong I don't know how to begin to answer him. I try. I'm sure, even with the danger, they would rather be free. Norberto answers, "What do they know about being free? They're only birds. My father says freedom is overrated." I cringe at this and dare to say, what if a country has its liberty taken from it? If you want to run a country properly, you sometimes have to sacrifice liberty to order. His words are frightening. Eduardo, how can I beg him for your freedom if, to him, freedom means nothing? Norberto picks up a pair of binoculars and inspects a large bird with a flute-like whistle in a thick fringe of tall reeds along the river's edge, its brown wings pumping slowly. "What is it?" I ask, afraid that right before my eyes some noose or net will snag the poor creature. "Whistling heron. Do you want it?" Horrified, I say, "No, no." How can I help but think of the prisoners Norberto's father has captured, of you, Eduardo, so that I have to clench my hands together to keep from hurrying from cage to cage to release the prisoners into the freedom of the sky. A servant brings out a silver tray, and I hear the clinking of ice in 2 tall glasses. There are silver straws to sip the lemonade, and a plate of alfajores. As the woman leaves, she glances at the cages and shudders. Norberto sits beside me, and leaning over, kisses my throat. I am not prepared, and can't help turning aside. Hastily, I whisper, "Your parents will see us." He runs a hand along my bare arm. They've got other things on their minds. In a hushed voice, he says, "Father is afraid he is spending too much time here. He doesn't want the other generals to get the idea that for some reason he is hiding away, or there will be a grab for his job." Here is an opportunity. You sound as if you know a lot about your father's position. I know all about it, Norberto brags. I hear him on the phone, and he talks to me. He wants to prepare me for a place in the government one day, so he tells me a lot about what's happening in the country. Papa is clever. When he sets his mind on something, no one is a match for him. This is confidential, but he has his eyes on General Videla's job. Last week, he invited down here some of the generals who would support him against Videla. If Whelan knew of Father's plans, he would have Father behind bars. But I am not interested in the general's ambitions, I ask. Would your father do something if you wanted him to? Papa? Of course. He gives me a smug smile. Why? I just wondered. Norberto leans over and kisses me again. I manage not to cringe. He puts his arm around me and draws me close. His body is shivering like Dichoso's when a rabbit or squirrel is close. I can't keep myself from jumping up. I just don't feel comfortable doing that in your parents' home. He grins at me. Then we'll have to have a slow ride back in my car. To escape him, I wander over to the imprisoned birds. Norberto has taken up his binoculars and is looking across the river. I loosen the catch on the egret's cage. It has only to dance a bit, and the cage door will open and the great bird will be free. I am amazed at what I have done. My courage is for you, Eduardo, and like the bird, I will set you free. The maid returns to announce dinner. The 4 of us are lost, sitting at the enormous table, and I tremble under the general's attentive stare. 2 servants wait upon us, one of them hovering over the general, who is eating a dinner of broth and chicken cut into small pieces. Our plates are heaped with bife de costilla, the largest and most tender steak I have had since our day at Uncle Julio's ranch. Norberto's mother orders the servants to bring in more of this or that for us, and as if we have just come from months of starvation. I think of you hungry and in prison, Eduardo, as I do every minute of the day, and my appetite disappears, so that I can hardly put a forkful into my mouth. The general notices. I am forced to exist on little morsels, but you can have what you like, young lady. I hope you are not letting some faddish diet tell you what to eat. Women should have a little padding on them. He gives Norberto a knowing wink. I am conscious of Senora Lopez watching me during dinner. I think she guesses at my discomfort. As we get up from the table, she says, Norberto and his father can have one of their little chats while I show you the rest of their house. She leads me from one dark, dispiriting room to another. The rooms look unlived in, as if this were a house of ghosts. Whenever she sees some little sign of life, a curtain pulled back, a sofa pillow crushed, an open book, she hastily straightens and clears away, removing any clue the place is inhabited by a family. When we come to what must be the General's study, she lingers at his desk, putting piles of paper into rigid order. She fingers a file and, like a magician, extracts a sheet of paper, which she tucks into her pocket. She has been so quick I am unsure of what I actually saw. As we move into another room, Senora Lopez asks, "How long have you known my son?" Her voice is impersonal, but she is watching me closely. "Only a short time," I say. "Then you don't know him well." It is not a question. "You seem like a very nice young girl, one who has been well brought up. Norberto can be quite pleasant, but don't be deceived." Her words unnerve me. "What do you mean?" She finds a chair pulled out of place to catch the light from the window as if someone had been reading there. Hastily, she returns it to its place. "This is an evil house," she says. "I have trouble keeping order here. Come, they'll be waiting for us." Once again, I doubt myself. I have counted on Norberto's tender feeling for me. Because he cares for me, Eduardo, he will care for you. But perhaps there is no tenderness, only a desire to possess me as he possesses his poor birds. "Don't be deceived," his mother said. If his mother does not trust him, how can I? I tell myself it is only an old woman's bitterness, that she is appalled at what her husband does, and this influence on her son. I have seen hatred in the way she stares at the General, but there is no hatred when she looks at Norberto, only pity. It's not too late for me to abandon the whole scheme, to escape from Norberto and his malevolent father and disturbed mother. I know mine is a precarious plan. I know I might not succeed, but it is the only plan I have. Later, when Norberto and I go out into the terrace, Norberto asks, "What did you and Mama talk about?" I feel I must protect the Senora. "Nothing. She was very nice." "She is loca, crazy. She gives my father trouble all the time, and one of these days he is going to have her put away." Norberto suddenly stands still, staring. I look too. The door of the great egret cage is open. A thrill of pleasure and terror surges through me. Norberto hurries over to see what has happened. I am afraid he will guess, but no, he only says, "I need to find better cages. The fool who made these doesn't know what he's doing." It's not a problem. I can easily get another egret next week. Might General Lopez free you, Eduardo, because it will be so easy to find another to take your place? I shudder at my thought. The General calls to us that he is ready to leave. I cast a glance at the row of cages and fight a compulsion to open all of them. Then I follow Norberto to the launch, dreading the moment we will be alone in the car. As we prepare to board, General Lopez joins us. "I'll be driving back with you, son. I have an appointment tomorrow. Your mother pointed out that going along with you will save my driver a trip." I see Norberto's face turn red with frustration and anger. "But Papa, that's why you pay the driver for." Color returns to his father's face. "I'll decide what I pay him for." It is the first harsh thing I have heard him say. All afternoon he has smiled fondly upon Norberto. "Eduardo, is there a limit to what General Lopez will do for his son?" Senora Lopez says to Norberto, "I thought you would be pleased to have your father's company." A sly smile plays around her thin lips. Norberto gives her a killing look. So it is settled that the General will go back in the car with us. I am so grateful that I could fling my arms around Senora Lopez.